This is Wide Open Spaces, and today in the studio, singer, songwriter, novelist, humorist, politician, and entertainer who is wrapping up his 14-day Hanukkah tour tonight in Houston at the Mucky Duck, Mr. Kinky Friedman. Welcome back to Kpft.
Hey, Rourke, always a pleasure to be here.
Great to have you, my man. It's been a busy couple weeks for you.
Yeah, it's been. We started out 8 nights on the Hanukkah tour, and then we took some more offers that came in over the phone, and the result is 13 nonstop, 13 shows in 13 different cities consecutively, and some of them were just terrific. I mean, it was great doing it. And but going to Minneapolis and Chicago and Aspen and Santa Fe and Tucson and Denver and Kansas City and St. Louis and Memphis and Fort Worth, whatever else I've left off.
Zigzagging all over the place.
The one thing we learned was, as far as the governor's campaign of 2006, we won that race every place but Texas. That I've learned. People are
they loved you.
Yeah, they love me. And today, with particularly I think the Rick Perry president's run, people are always telling me they voted for me in the Texas airports. But this 2 weeks ago, just starting out this tour, I came through the TSA guys, security in the Austin airport, and this big, burly, black TSA agent started following me into the terminal after I'd supposedly passed through, and I had an unlit cigar in my hand, oral fixation, a little magic feather, and I figured, well, this guy's going to bust me for just having an unlit cigar, you know, and so finally he catches up with me, and I say, okay, what's the problemo, officer? Is it the cigar? And he says, no. He says, I just want to shake a good man's hand.
Amazing.
And I thought not only was that a beautiful thing to say, but it crossed my desk right there. Nobody's probably ever told Rick Perry that, or ever will.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to shake a good man's hand. That's what he was talking about, I believe. Was being the last nail that hasn't been hammered down.
Mm-hmm.
And of course now things are so strange in Texas politically. We've got the blondes and the Aggies. The Aggies are all telling Rick Perry jokes, and he has made George W. look like Thomas freaking Jefferson.
Mm-hmm.
So he's rehabbed George W. And people, instead of telling me they voted for me, are now grabbing me by the shoulder and saying, "You should have won, Kinky. You should have won." And it's quite amazing, because Rick does he's got a good point, he just can't articulate it. The point being, we elected a guy who was a great candidate, who knew the name of the vice president of Tajikistan and everything else, who has proven to be a incredibly weak leader.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a real disaster as a leader or a statesman. Just doesn't have it. That's Obama. And not to be too hard on him, because none of the other guys seem to either, but there is something to be said, you know, before you put down Newt Gingrich, you know, or Rick Perry or anybody. It's not about a debate, and it's not about little mistakes that you make, you know. I mean, somehow the Americans have seen through Rick Perry, apparently. I mean, he's just not happening, not getting the traction. But Churchill, remember, I'm reading Churchill right now. He was 65. He'd been a joke for 30 years. It's like Donny Osmond. You know, Donny Osmond saying he could not get booked into the Mucky Duck. Nobody would book him any place. For how long? 20 years? 30 years? I mean, he was a joke. He got out of show business completely. And it was the same with Churchill, of course. He was just totally... And yet Churchill was the only one who could see beyond the horizon. I mean, he could grapple with the future because he was the only one who could see it.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else there thought, we can work with this guy Hitler, you know. I mean, he's sincere. He's they interviewed him, you know, all the top people, and they would not believe. They just would not let themselves believe that he was who he was.
Mm-hmm.
Only Churchill really understood his mind. And to have to wait till the guy's 65. So you look at Newt Gingrich, who I've never been a fan of Newt's especially. I met him here with Carolyn Farb, actually, 6 months ago. And like all these guys, he's charming, he's smart. He's, you know, you spend 5 minutes with him, you say, hey, this guy's not so bad. But he was good that night. And the fact is, we all think of him as the Speaker of the House and as a real Republican operative, you know. it could be. It's possible, based on Obama, the mistake we made. And most Democrats are profoundly disappointed in Obama, whatever they tell you. Very few people think this guy really is a leader or ever could be one. And we're not talking about legislation here, what bills you pass. You know, we're talking about being a JFK, having the gift to inspire millions of young people to join the Peace Corps and work for 11 cents an hour like I did, and on the other side of the world, and be very proud of it, of what you're doing. I mean, he hasn't been able to do that with young people or blacks or whites or greens or anybody. And it's a little bit like Tim Tebow. They're like a quarterback. Tom Brady nobody wanted Tom Brady. Nobody wanted Tebow, for that matter.
Well, this summer you got behind Rick Perry. Are you still behind Rick Perry?
Well, I never got behind him, but it doesn't pay to talk about it. I can condense this into a 1-minute discussion to just show you how bad the internet is, or the evil, dark side of it.
All right.
The Daily Beast called me and said, write a piece on Rick Perry. Do you want to do that? I said, fine. So I turned on CNN, and I saw everybody, this was before Perry got in the race. They're all saying he's stupid, he doesn't have it, he can't possibly make it. They're very arrogant about that. And it turns out they were right this time. Maybe they were right that he doesn't have it. But either way, I said, I'm going to be a good little Christian for a change, which it's difficult for me to do as a Jew. But I'm going to write something good I'm going to find something good in everybody. So to find something good in Rick, I did. I said he's very pro-Israel, which I like. Obama is the first modern president that has had this terrible relationship with Israel, and it's hurt Israel. It's isolated her even further than she was before, and it has empowered all the bad guys in the neighborhood. That's the bad part of it. And it took Harry Truman 12 minutes to recognize the state of Israel. He was the first one to do it. And it's taken Obama one term to really isolate her. And that's all perception. I'm not talking, again, about legislation. It's just he has appointed a lot of Jew-hating Jews around him. The Rahm Emanuels, the David Axelrods, the Sonny Kapsteins, who say, oh, we just hate Netanyahu. We like Israel. Well, at any rate, so Perry's a friend of Israel. He also sat in on drums with ZZ Top on one occasion. So I tried to find good stuff. And he also was very gracious to me. He didn't take me as a joke when I ran for governor, as a lot of Democrats did.
And he called you after.
I refused to concede, as you may remember. I was kind of drove off in a petulant snit.
Right.
And Rick caught up with me and called me. I was in a laundromat in Kerrville, I remember him. And it was the governor's office calling a few days later. And he gave me a little pep talk, very gracious.
Right.
He didn't need to do that. He could have really taken me as a joke. You know, said, what do we need, a clown in the governor's? He didn't do that. That was the Democrats that did that, when they weren't busy calling me a racist. So I would say the way things are now, we have a president who's raised $1 billion and has lost his soul, and the Republicans are jealous of that. They'd like to do that too, if they could. So we really and a lot of the things like musicians being able to run the country better than politicians. I think everybody knows that now. You know that we won't get a hell of a lot done in the morning, but we'll work late and we'll be honest. And we've got the creativity and the decency that these politicians don't seem to have. So I remember when I called them the Crips and the Bloods during the campaign, people would wince back then. They would say, oh, that's a little harsh, isn't it? It's not a little harsh.
Right.
They are the bullies of the playground. You want an honest man, you'd better go with Ron Paul.
Right.
Or Bernie Sanders or Dennis Kucinich, because they're the only ones in Washington that are, and George Washington would be horrified at what's happened to the little town named after him.
We're live in the Kpft studios with Mr. Kinky Friedman, and he is playing his Hanukkah show tonight, the last one on the tour. What's the difference between a Hanukkah show and a regular show?
Absolutely nothing. Well, there's one minor difference, and that is I have a surprise presentation to make to Little Juford tonight that is Hanukkah related.
All right.
And he has worked up a little Hanukkah medley.
Okay.
That he'll be performing. But beyond that.
Now, do you present this to him every night of the tour?
No.
It's only tonight,
He hasn't even seen it. He doesn't know what it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll present it to him just before his little Hanukkah medley.
Now, the tour ends tonight, and it's been going on for 14 days, and then it starts, you do another tour called the Southern Discomfort Tour.
Right, the deep South, right.
And that starts February 8th here in Houston. So you can hang out in Houston for a month and go ice skating at the Galleria? And
I'm planning half an hour ahead right now. Because there's so much stuff coming up. We've just signed a contract with Willie Nelson, and I have signed a deal with HarperCollins to do a book called The Troublemaker.
All right. And have you started working with Willie on this yet?
Barely.
Okay.
We have till May.
But you just finished one with Billy Bob Thornton.
That one's done, but I didn't really write any of that. I produced that, more or less, which means Billy actually dictating everything over a microphone in this little alley behind his house in Beverly Hills, and smoking about 40 cigarettes a minute, and me smoking my cigar, and then transcribing it, and then editing it. And I dealt with the agents, the editors, and the publishers, and of course, you know what editors are. They're people who take something great and make it good, and that's what they've done. But Angelina Jolie has written a love letter to Billy for the introduction of this, and it's a beaut, and it really is very poignant. And then Robert Duvall is in the book. Dwight Dwight's got some hilarious stuff about the making of Sling Blade, which what the hell is Ritter's first name? John Ritter, who was bugled to Jesus some years back. But John Ritter and Dwight Yoakam and Billy Bob they never thought anybody would see Sling Blade. The whole time they were making it, they thought, boy, this is good, but it cost less than $1 million to make. Mm-hmm. So now Billy's done a new one that he's written, directed, and stars in. And anytime somebody tells you this guy wrote it, he starred in it, he directed it, it sucks. Mm-hmm. It sucks. The last good one was Orson Welles' Citizen Kane, and then Sling Blade. And now Billy's done another one like that with Robert Duvall and Kevin Bacon, and it's called Jane Mansfield's Car. It'll be out next year. He could not get the $11 million to do this movie, and he won an Oscar for Sling Blade. He couldn't get it from the Americans. He had to go to the Russians to get it. So, but the movie, as Billy points out, it will be up against $300 million video game movies, as well as movies about short, chubby guys with curly hair that take a goat to Las Vegas and screw all the chorus girls. That's what all the movies are going to be next year.
Sure.
Except for Jane Mansfield's Car.
Well, I think it'll do pretty good, and you never know who's gonna step up to the plate to go see something like that. But Swing Blade was great.
Yeah, Sling Blade has really got it, and then of course the book deals and.
Well, hang on.
Okay.
Before you move on, let's talk about acting in movies, because you actually starred as governor of. You was in a film and you played the governor of Texas.
Right.
Tell folks a little bit about that, and when was that filmed?
Well, unfortunately, I was quite ill that day.